Hey Rohan, welcome to this month's IC Feature interview. I'm your host Abhinav. And before we start, Rohan, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience?
Surely, right? I mean, I feel this is one of the first times I'm having to introduce myself without having that burden of the interviewer trying to know myself a lot more than I do. But that being said, right? So I'm the simple person with a BCom degree, graduation degree from St. Xavier's College, right? And I studied from St. Xavier's School. I did my college life from St. Xavier's College, and more so, I feel that makes me who I am to a certain extent, right? And from there on, obviously I went on to do a few more things in life after college. So if I were to let put it short, right, I feel I would be a culmination of what my education portals have given me, but at the same time I feel I'm a culmination of all the people I've also met and try to learn from them. So I wouldn't want to keep this question really long because it does tend to get a lot monotonous after some time.
Right. So Rohan, can you let's go back to the days when you just joined St. Xavier's Kolkata. Your first days of college. What are your fond remembrances during that time? What are the things that you were thinking of?
Right. So if I were to go back, right, I mean, I would always categorize myself to be this person who always followed the herd, right? I always had this herd behavior mentality. And back in school, I didn't really have this concrete idea, plan, structure in my mind that, hey, Rohan, this is what I'm going to do, right? And just because of that, I really felt that back then, I think in 2016, right? St. Xavier's College was the easiest way for me because one, it did have a good sort of name associated with it.
Right.
Two, it was tough to enter because of the marks it came along with. But three, it was easy for me because I was in Xavier's, right? So I didn't really think much about it. I was not that person who applied to 15 colleges, and I do consider it to be a negative from my part, right? Because back then I wasn't this person who was aware. But that being said, when I entered college, I feel I had this one thing in my mind, that was the determination to stand out, right? Because and the only reason because of that was that in school we were a small bunch of people, right? In a batch, perhaps about 180 students. And that being said, in college I knew that if I'm entering, let's say, a BCom morning, which is essentially about 700 750 boys entering at let's say 6 a.m. in the morning, right? You would want to some way stand out, right? Because otherwise who are you apart from a pool of people? So this was something which I always had in mind. And from that point on, I think I really tried to cling on to the opportunities which came along everyone's way, right? It wasn't just it came along my way. There were events, there were fests, there were a lot of things happening. More importantly, there were a lot of opportunities to excel at sports as well, right? So me coming from this background where I was at that point playing state level badminton to a certain level, I always wanted to explore that element of college life as well, where I'm playing, I'm contributing, but also, let's say, like exposing myself to this new facet, which is like business events, other sort of, let's say, conclaves which are taking place. So it was a lot of things happening at one point, especially in the first year, right? Because unfortunately, so I didn't give much let's say precedent to academics in first year, which I should have, right? I always tell my juniors that, hey, no matter what you do, let's not deviate from the academic bit of it, because it does come to use at some point or the other, no matter who you are, where you are, or what you're doing. So apart from that, I think I did a lot of things in college. I would like to believe, excel in a lot of things. I did fail in a lot of things. But all I can say is that I did take a lot of opportunities. I didn't let them go. And I have conversations today with a few of my closest friends, right, in college, that there were times when it was this random audition event which was taking place, or a random first interview which I just went for, right? And I used to just stay in college because, I mean, after, like, if I'm not mistaken, our college in first year is to get over by 9:50, which
Yeah.
is usually the time I wake up, right? So my day was more or less done by that point of time. So I used to stay in college. We used to have practice for sports, for badminton, for fests, whatever, right? But I used to stick to college, and I saw that there were a lot of opportunities coming my way. So all I can say is that, I mean, this is something which I think I did well, which was expose myself to everything which was out there, because otherwise you don't really know, right? You don't really know, and you're thrown into this perplexation that, hey, there's nothing there out there for me. I can't really do anything about it. but it's not that. It's that there is something out there. You just need to find out what it is. So college life for me was a culmination of that, obviously till the first year, because even in the first year I got a good opportunity to work in a great startup as well. So it was just a lot of things happening, right? And I think that I was quite satisfied by the end of first year. Still having the herd mentality behavior though, right? Still having that mentality behavior, because uh, what I did, my first breakout of sorts when I entered college was all my closest friends were starting CA, which is something which you do when you start BCom. It's more or less a majority of folks doing that, right? So I also took my articleship form, if I'm not mistaken. I went to this Loudon Street office and I took it from them, and I feel that was my first breaking out, because I didn't end up submitting the form, right? And I'm I'm so thankful for it, because I think I would have really sucked at it, right? Because maybe if I would have got the interest later on, it would have been a different story. But where I am today, perhaps I don't see myself doing what becoming a CA rather, right? I wouldn't
Yeah.
have been able to fix myself. So that was my first breaking out, and I realized it was good, right? Because right after that, things did fall in place. I did end up getting an internship. I did end up getting decent grades in second sem. So the point is, things did fell in place, and I realized that, hey, you can choose what you want to do, right? And that was quite early, right? That was perhaps the fag end of first year, but you do end up understanding that you can follow that one thing which you want to do, or not do something which you don't want to do, which is more important, I feel, in the conversation we are having.
Yeah. So I think what the key takeaways here are that, one should put yourself out there, and, under, understanding what you don't want to do is very important at a very early stage, if
Oh,
not
yes,
what
I
you want to
feel
do.
that's how you understand what you want to do, right? Because I still don't know what I want to do.
Yeah.
But I have a list of things, and I feel you should always write it down, right? You should always write down things, because there are just, I mean, even in a day's work, there are too many things happening around. Even if you're not doing anything, like
Yeah.
even if someone's just chilling at home, they're still doing a lot of things in their mind. So it's always better to write it down.
Right. Correct. So coming to the, the most interesting part of the story, your internship at Uber.
Right.
Can you tell us what exactly happened? The series of events that happened and how you ended up joining Uber after your second year.
Sure. So Uber again for me was a long story, right? Because on the face of it, I became this person who got into Uber in college initially, right? And and it was big at the onset of it. But again, there was a lot of backstory associated with it. It wasn't just this one-time thing,
Yeah.
because I remember right after second, like right after first year rather, when I was still playing badminton, and at that point of time, I was talking about 8 to 9 hours of practice a day, right? So there was a lot of time. Like that's, yeah, pure play professional badminton going on out there. So I didn't really have the time to focus on any sort of work I was doing, like, because
Right.
back then I, to be very honest, was trying to like push and break that threshold of professional sports. And obviously, right, you understand that unlike academics, or unlike anything on a regular day which we do, which has to deal with the business world, not entrepreneurship specifically, but in general the corporate world, if you study, there's a 99.9% chance that you'll land something decent, right? But with sports, if you give your 110%, there's still a 99.9% chance that you won't do anything in life, right? Because the odds we are playing in. So, I mean, I think back in 2017, I did take a call, right? I was playing, and then I was also working, but I did end up leaving my first internship because it was hindering my sports life. So that point on, I had actually applied for Uber for the first time, and not much, like, not a lot of people know this, but I didn't get through that, right? I didn't get through that. I still console myself saying that I couldn't, like, because they had asked me for a full time working schedule, and I said I couldn't. So I still console myself saying that I didn't get through because I was still playing. But maybe there's a good possibility that they just didn't select me, right? I mean, I would
Yeah.
never really know about it. But that being said, I think second year, in the middle of second year, I did apply for an internship at Uber, but luckily, like surprisingly, so it was an internshala, right? So I mean, I was this guy who was just applying for an internship because there was a decent sort of salary associated, because I'd never seen that sort of salary associated on Internshala, right? I'd
Yeah.
never seen that. And the role job profile was also something like, I think, marketing internship at Uber, right? So it seemed interesting. I was essentially not doing anything else at that point of time because I was injured. So I was like, might as well just try it out, right? So I did apply, and I had genuinely no hopes of going forward, because there were already, like, I think there was a last day and there were already some 630 or 700 applicants. So I just applied for the fun of it, because I had my account all sorted. So I just needed to click on apply, right? So I did, and I think the same day I got a call from the marketing manager, right? And I didn't know much about, like, Uber. Obviously, I knew, but when she called me, she started asking me a lot of questions about Uber Eats, which is something which I didn't know back then, right? And I still, from what I can recall, my first question to her was, or no, rather, this was the first. Like, she had a basic interview when we called,
Yeah.
when she called, and the next day she called me over to the Uber office in Salt Lake, right? So I still didn't know anything about Uber Eats at that point of time. So I went for the interview, and I think she asked me, what do you know about Uber Eats? And I genuinely didn't have a clue about what is happening out there, right? So I asked her that, I mean, I'm genuinely not sure what this is, but if you can give a brief idea, perhaps I can break it down for you. So she told me that this is a food aggregating platform. We have just started in Bombay and a few other cities. We are launching in Kolkata in the next, I think, couple of months, right? So I told her that, oh, so is it something like Swiggy? And and the second later, I realized that you can't really abruptly ask questions like this,
Yeah.
because they were the direct competition back then. So I mean, there's been a learning curve since that point, right? Because I recall, I think we had about 4 interviews, because again, I was just a college student, right? So I
Yeah.
mean, after every interview, perhaps they were thinking, am I the right fit? Which is rightfully so. So and to be, I think, to be honest, even the guys who were in my team later on ended up taking my interview, the first or the second interview rather, right? So it was a long process, right? It was a long process of a lot of people judging, and from then on, I think the last interview was taken by my manager back then, who ended up becoming my manager, the city head, and and I would like to believe that organizations like Uber, right? Answering your questions today, organizations like Uber, or let's say any organization where we really talk or harp about the work culture, right? The
Yeah.
the environment, the ethos of how you're, let's say, portraying yourself to be, is completely based on where you are in an environment.
Yeah.
So in these sort of organizations, you really understand that they really value what you say, and you're not taking it at face value, right? what you are what you are at any point of time in life isn't necessarily what you're judged by, because they would, like, any sort of person in these environments, in these cultures, they also tend to understand where they are, right? So what they do is they try to take out the best in you. And I found out things about myself that I didn't know back then. And this is very early we are talking about, right? This is this immature second year student who is just going for an interview, who thinks too highly of himself as well, right? That, wow, I've landed this interview. But it wasn't the case, right? It wasn't the case. The case was that, hey, they have given me a brilliant opportunity just to understand myself a little better. And
Yeah.
in the process, perhaps because I was genuine, perhaps because I didn't fake it, because there were a lot of candidates, right? There were a lot of candidates who were coming from like a proper B schools. There were a lot of things happening out there. So I knew that perhaps if I were to fake it, there were a lot of people who had better stories than I did. So I stuck to the grassroots. I stuck to the fact that I love playing. This has been my focus. I was honest enough to say that I've already not landed a job in Uber before. So I feel everything culminated to them understanding that, hey, we can perhaps try this guy out. That's all, right? And 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 luckily, so that was the opportunity I was searching for. And I didn't know the mammothness of the situation, right?
Yeah.
Because I think the last interview which was happening either with Tapan or with Pradeep, the city or the national head, uh, they ended up offering me a full-time role, right? And unsure of what was happening, because I asked them, or rather, I confided in them that I'm still in college. So he asked me whether, like, what time my college ends. So I was like, I think 9:50. So he was surprised. So then he said that if you don't have a problem, we don't have a problem. And that was the tipping point, right? For me, I understood that this environment really makes you feel like home. That's one. But more importantly, it gives you that trust.
Right.
It puts that trust in you, and it ensures that, hey, we can, let's say, try this thing out. Although it's new, it hasn't been tested. But perhaps, what are the odds? If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, right? So that was how I landed Uber. Again, a story which I think I cherish a lot, because who I am today, I would say that more than anything else is because of the kind of environment I was thrown into at such an early point in time, right? And if I'm not mistaken, I think one of my close colleagues also joined soon after in
Yeah.
college. He joined soon after, and we had a great time, right? And we used to always discuss that, because the first day I entered, if I'm not mistaken, I saw the city head playing table tennis with the security, right? And you immediately understand what kind of a inclusive environment you're being thrown into, and that is something which was an eye opener for me. So again, the process being simple, that maybe you can just be honest. But again, the most important part would be that I got really lucky here. You should, as just a tip, right, for anyone, just prepare yourself before the interview. uh, me asking the manager what Uber Eats is, or comparing it to a Swiggy, was a stupid move. And I just got lucky, right? I just got lucky because perhaps there were other things weighing heavier, which they wanted. But today, if I am an interviewer, I would not appreciate if someone doesn't know, like if an interviewee is
Yeah.
coming and not knowing where I come from. So again, things you learn eventually, things you learn with time, but just a heads up from things I did wrong, maybe, right?
All right. So after graduation last year, you joined Dunzo, and you worked for some time there. You had a short stint there, and then you went back to Uber. And
Right,
a lot of students who are graduating, right now, in the last 5 years, the number of startups in India have increased exponentially, and they are kind of confused as to what sort of companies should they join. Should they join startups, or should they end up joining companies that are set, or have been there in the market for a long while, or startups that are still in the space where they are trying to find a product market fit, or heavy on experimenting. Having
right.
been a part of two different setups at two different scales, what do you think went behind your decisions, and what are the differences that you have observed?
So for me, right, I would not, let's say, go out of my peripheral of the commerce ecosystem, right? I would not, let's say, go to science, because I am not a subject matter expert there. But if I were to stick myself to the field of commerce in general, right, which can include marketing, which can include finance, everything in general, I would like to believe that we can somehow break it down into a few major categories, right? You can talk about consulting in general, which can be any sort of consulting, which can be financial consulting, management consulting, strategy consulting, and then comes those big names like the MBBs of the world, right?
Yeah.
So where we stand today, unless I would like to believe that you come from a really strong portfolio, which essentially also requires a good sort of degree from a DU college, right? So if we somehow have that in place, we can explore that element of it. But I realize that unless or today, right, where we stand, colleges in Kolkata aren't that exposed to this environment right now. And rightfully so, because obviously when an organization is coming to a new city which is not their headquarters, they would obviously want to maximize the output out of it and get a lot of colleges from that where they can pick up pools. But they don't prefer to do that. They usually come to one or two colleges, and that's not economic for them. So it does make sense that they don't come to Kolkata anymore. But that being said, obviously you can expose yourself, right? There is always this referral portal. There's always the what do you call it? The career page. But that being said, I would like to say that to answer your question up, right? That when you see yourself at the likes of an Uber or a Dunzo, which is one, let's say, trying to break through with a
Yeah.
brilliant idea, and
Yeah.
one which is already up there, trying to, let's say, make the maximum profit out there from a loss making situation.
Yeah.
So these two organizations, I feel at the core, at the core, it's still the same.
Okay.
Because when I was working with Dunzo, right? I think I started working with Dunzo right after college, and it was a very interesting role, right? It was a role where, so Dunzo, if I were to just give a brief about it, uh, was this chotu of the town, right? That Dunzo, you can Dunzo anything and everything.
Yeah.
So you would rather call a Ramu Kaka or a Chotu and get that done, and you would rather do it with Dunzo. But I was not working with the B2C platform at all, right? Because that is what Dunzo was known for. But I was working for this new project, which was called Dunzo for Business, which started off, and it was there in Bangalore, it was there in a few states, but Hyderabad was still new, and I started with Hyderabad. And I was, let's say, given the opportunity to grow the vertical from scratch, right? So it was a lot of things happening. It was a lot of, let's say, leeway which I got, and a lot of, let's say, decision making, ownership which I had with me, and
Right.
a lot of choices I made, right? But that being said, I would like to believe that at certain point in time, unless it's your thing you're working for, and that's completely me, right? Everyone has different perspective here. For me, I felt that my ideas, right, for anything, let's say I want to grow this specific metric for the next 1 week.
Yeah.
So on a week on week, I want a better growth rate. But for that, a lot of things need to go behind that work, right? Perhaps I need to ensure that the geolocation is increasing. Perhaps I need to ensure that the supply of driver partners are increasing at certain points. A lot of factors coming into play, and at the same time, a lot of, let's say, verticals also coming into play. So the
Right.
ops team enters itself, the supply team enters itself in these situations. So obviously, you tend to understand that if you are working on a micro project, which you will, right? As an individual, you'll obviously, as you're not the CEO, so you're still working in a micro project. And that too, if you're lucky, right? If you're getting ownership of micro project, that means you're lucky. But you still understand that unless it's your thing, your ideas will always be ideas, right? And the implementation of the same will always take time, because at the same time, when you are thinking this is your priority, the leadership will obviously think that there are more important things, which there are, right? Which there are. So that way, I somehow felt that for me, I would want to be in a place where my impact of whatever I'm doing, my daily work, my process oriented work, my ideation work, everything, I wanted a better impact out of it, right? Dunzo for me was amazing in the way that it was a great environment. I found some gems who are still the best of friends I have right now, right? Because Dunzo in general was this company where all these big corp folks are coming in to work because it's the next big thing from what people are saying, which I also believe, right? Because it's like the Gojek of India, right? It's doing everything, and that's how it is. That's how it has to be, because end of the day, it's a supply game. You need to ensure that you're optimizing your supply, because so is everyone else. Swiggy didn't have to start a Swiggy stores, but what are they doing when it's not a lunch or a breakfast or a dinner time? They're not doing anything else, right? So they need to ensure that the driver partners are sticking to that platform, which is the most important element, because demand can be generated. End of the day, anything we talk about on an aggregator level, it's a supply game. You need to ensure that the supply partners, the driver partners or the rider partners, they are with you, and only then can you grow or scale. So Dunzo again was great, but from there, again, my first manager, right, who was
Yep.
back in UberEats, he gave me a call one fine day, and he asked me that, "What are you doing?" And I said that this is what I'm doing. I've been working with Dunzo for the last, I think, 4 months or something. And he said that, so there's this new opportunity in UberEats, in Uber, right? And I think I didn't mention this, right? The reason why I left Uber was because I felt it became very monotonous for me. I just felt that it wasn't something, because the money was coming in, right? The work was so casual back then, because we had reached a certain point. Now it was more about like keeping up to the track. It was
Yeah.
to, rather than like increasing momentum, to keep the momentum same, right?
Yeah.
So it ends up, let's say, keeping you as an individual not being able to reach the fullest potential. So I confronted my manager Prateek back then, and he was glad to say that maybe you can have something else in your portfolio. You can try it because you have the age. and I moved on. I worked with Dunzo, but then he called me and said that, so there's this new opportunity in Uber, and I wasn't sure, right? Because Dunzo was great for me back then. It was just working out. Things were happening. I just shifted cities, and again, 4 months and you don't change a new job, right? You just don't. So a lot of things were going on in my mind. I spoke to my relatives who were higher up in the corporate ladder. I spoke to my seniors, and they all said the same thing, right? That the opportunity which Uber like put forward for me, it was just it was the next level, right? If not the next to next level. So so at that point of time, I think a year back, I was asked to lead an entire region of AP Telangana, right? And individually so so that again for me was the incentivizing factor. I knew that perhaps if I joined this, and it wasn't Uber Eats again, it was Uber,
Yeah.
so it was the core business again. And I knew that if I can join this, the kind of let's say impact I can have will be on a way higher level. So that was my psyche behind choosing Uber. And of course, there was a lot of difference in the kind of pay scale which came along as well. So it was just a better opportunity, right? And thankfully, so all my colleagues, all the leadership in Dunzo, they tried to let's say have conversations, but they were super cordial, right? They were super understanding about what was happening, because even they somehow understood that this was an opportunity which was better, right? And I'll be perhaps forever grateful to them for that, because you don't always see that you're in an environment, and that's the difference, right? And that's why I keep on saying that at the core of it, all these businesses who want to grow are the same, because unless you're inclusive as an organization, unless you
Yeah.
understand what your employees want and what makes them happy, you can't really optimize the workforce. And the workforce is everything, right? Because the workforce is coming up, doing everything. Everything will fall in place if your workplace is in place. So that way, again, super fortunate to have folks like what I found in Dunzo. But that was my move from Dunzo to Uber, right? In a span of 5 months, I did have a lot of thoughts. But perhaps after a month or so, I realized after landing, let's say the first deal, speaking to the likes of all the top CXO level folks in India, not even the state, right? Be it from Flipkart, be it from Amazon. There were so many things happening, and I was just 21-year-old guy who was just like viewing it in awe, right? Because because it was just this brilliant world I was exposed to, and at the same time I was given that responsibility, right? I was given that responsibility that this is the PNL you need to manage, this is the KRA which you need to take care of. So the opportunities were thrown at me quite early, right? I recognized them quite early, I didn't let them go. But more importantly, I feel post that it was just a on the job learning, right? Because I can literally categorize myself to be nothing else but a generalist, right? And we generalists, we try to do everything, right?
Yeah.
And it's like Prateep, who was my manager, who said this, that as a generalist you need to be a jack of all trades but a master of one, right? I would like to believe that I'm really good at communication, right? I would like to believe that I'm really good at negotiation. So that was one thing which was good at, and I tried to utilize that element of it, that facet of it, to the best of my ability where I was working, even if I was working in Uber or Dunzo or Uber Eats, wherever I was working with. I think that was one thing which I always try to focus. So again, back to Uber, but this was a very different world, right? Because this was a different city, this was a different office, this was a different work profile I was working with. But more importantly, so being a scaled up company, Uber's teams are usually large, right? But I was luckily working for this team which was just like I think 14 or 15 members pan India, right?
Okay.
So that way I realized that individually what all we were doing, that was impacting way more than a regular person at Uber would. And that's why, so I was like, to let's say bring things to perspective, right? I was working for this vertical called Uber Marketing Solutions, where we were trying to use the Uber vehicles as an advertising platform. So we were
Okay.
telling the brand that, hey, you can use the vehicle for, let's say, on the car branding or inside the car branding, or perhaps you can use it for sampling. And it's not just going to be a regular outdoor marketing platform for you, right? It's going to be a platform which gives you intrinsic and extrinsic data associated with the OTT which you're
Yeah.
associating with, which is huge, right? Because with OTT we see a billboard or a hoarding, and we don't really get much data out of it, right? It's
Yeah.
pure introspection that hey, this location may be in a Park Street or a Banjara Hills or let's say Powai is going to garner a lot of attraction because it is a place where a lot of people are working. But it's speculation. You don't get data out of it. In today's world where we are marketing in such a scientific way, what Uber tried to do was just to bring things to perspective by giving a lot of real-time data, right? And
Right.
that became the, let's say, the pitching point for us. So through that we spoke to, like, rather I individually spoke to so many people. And more importantly, when you see, right, when you see you close a deal which is perhaps a 50 or a 60 lakh, and you see, let's say, a decent 10,000 driver partners being affected by it, right? And the amount is getting directly credited to their salary. That's a big thing, right? That's where you go back home and think that hey, Rohan, you have done a good job, because that impact which you wanted to see today is tangible. it's
Yes.
not it's not speculation anymore. So again, Uber for me was great that way. A great stint, a great experience. Unfortunately affected by the layoffs, but I, again, because of the kind of environment it threw me in, the kind of people I knew, the kind of culture I was in. I think when the lockdown started, we were still working from home, and we worked from home for a decent, let's say, 3 months, and we didn't have much, a lot of things to do, right? And I remember discussing with my colleagues that, hey, how are they keeping on paying us like this? Because it's just not okay, right? Because we don't have work. So you do get that link, right? That because you're there in such a inclusive organization who gives so much, right? Who
Yeah.
gives things over and above what is expected, be it a 5-star restaurant lunch every single day at your office, to all the perks you could possibly wish for, right? On the face of it, you think that why is the company paying so much for unnecessary things? You might want to be compelled to believe because it's an organization which is going through losses, right? So
Yeah.
these are the things perhaps at the core of it you would not want to have as expenses. But
Mm.
from an employee perspective, what I realized was it just gives you a lot of, let's say, gratitude and a lot of acknowledgement of the fact that you are an employee who is being treated well. So you need to give back to the organization. And I truly believe that that's the reason why all these big organizations do what they do. And they simply think about the well-being of the employees, but they know that it's just the subconscious mind, right? If I've been given something great by someone at any point of time, we are all elephants in some way. We don't forget. So
Yeah.
if something's happening every day, right? If some sort of, let's say, if I want to have a 5-course meal, I can have it at 4 p.m. in the afternoon. That's not a sort of luxury I was exposed to at any point of time in life, right? Coming from a, let's say, an upper middle class background, I wasn't exposed to that. So when I see something like that in my subconscious mind, I know that tomorrow if I have to work till 12, which I never did, which I never had to, but if I have to, I will, right? Because it's basic reciprocation of what they're doing for me.
Yeah.
So so that way, even after, let's say, our entire team was laid off, none of us were essentially sad, right? Because we knew that as an organization, these are things which need to be done because it's in no one's hand. So that's how I took it, right? That's how I took it. So it was great for me as well.
Okay. So you've been working full time for more than a year now. Um, a lot of students generally look up to seniors for their advice. So, as a conclusion part to our interview, what advice would you have to someone who is, just in college, or maybe in the sophomore or final year, trying to get the first job? What are the
Right.
things that, if you are an interviewer or if you are, kind of, looking for someone in your team, you would look for? Or maybe you can talk up from the other perspective where what are the red flags that you generally notice? Any advice that you have from that?
Surely, right? I feel over the years, uh, from both sides, right? Thankfully, so from both sides. Firstly, I would like to say it from the interviewee perspective, right? Because I would still like to believe that I'm majorly in that category, even now. And I believe that the most crucial element here is to keep always, right? Always, be it the first interview, the last interview, a round which you're submitting as a interim, let's say, submission, anything, right? Any communication, the ball should always be on your court, right? As an interviewee, like, this is how I feel, right? And I, maybe you might say that I've been lucky with things, but I like to believe that that's how I have taken on things, right? That's how I have approached things. And what I'm trying to say here is simply that as an interviewee, we always have this psyche that the interview is perhaps there to grill you, the interview is perhaps there to ask you things which you don't know, but you don't know anything, right? I don't know anything. There's a 99.9% chance that an interviewer can ask you a thing that you don't know,
Right.
but they choose not to do that. They are in cognizance of the fact what you know and you don't know, because of the kind of field you're coming from, right? So they can easily choose to ask a work related question which there's a 99.9% chance that you'll not know. But at the same time, you need to be that person who keeps the ball in his court. And what I mean by that is, in, I think the last phase, right? The last phase, after I was laid off from Uber, and I genuinely wanted a break, right? I was in no rush whatsoever to get a job, and I
Yeah.
was okay with it. Be it the good severance package that I got, perhaps, but whatever it might be, right? I was okay with it. And there were a lot of people who said that, why aren't you working? Because I mean, the only good thing perhaps which I started doing was I started meditating, right? Uh, and that's and I've been doing that since the last 7 months, right? Every day. So that's maybe the only good thing that I did during the lockdown for my own benefit. But apart from that, I was chilling, right? I was doing nothing else. I was reading here and there, but I was not having any expectations out of me, which a
Right.
lot of people were surprised at. And when I say a lot of people, a lot of close people who care about me. So I do care about what they say as well. But that being said, I knew where I stood, right? I didn't have that rush to land a job. I didn't want to apply to 1,000 different companies just to get that job, because maybe, yes, a lot of it stems from privilege as well. A lot of it stems from privilege, which I duly acknowledge. But at the same time, I needed that break to understand where I want to be next, right? I genuinely wanted to understand what is it that I want to do, because again, there were times even in Uber where I felt that I wasn't doing what I want to do, right?
Mm.
And we go back to the same question again, that what are the things you don't want to do,
Yeah.
right? So I kept on adding things, right? Kept on adding things. And from that point on, the first thing which I would suggest people, I would suggest folks, is to really understand what you don't want to do. Because there are umpteen number of jobs, there are umpteen number of opportunities. And and again, yes, you need to, let's say, improve on your, if nothing else, at least your soft skills, right? Hard skills can come along the way. You can go through a course, you can do this, that, but you really need to, let's say, sharpen the way you speak, the way you present yourself, the way the interviewer sees you, right? I mean, today, my, like, the first interview, let's say, where I am working today, my first
Yeah.
interview when my manager took, he didn't know who I was. And I made it that way, right? And I ensured that he doesn't know, because perhaps who you always are might not land you the job, but at the same time, you need to do your research. So this brings me to the second question, right? Always know who is interviewing you. Always do your research well. So I think I went through about 3 or 4 interviews during this entire lockdown phase before I chose where I'm working currently, right? And I ensured that I'm asking all the HR members that who is going to interview me. Can you send me their LinkedIn profile? Can you send me this, that? And I bugged them, right? And I genuinely bugged them. But what I understand from that is, the moment I know that person, I go through that person. If that person is hopefully active on LinkedIn, I would
Yeah.
go through that person, see where he or she comes from in terms of educational background, in terms of what they have done, what are the key metrics they have changed, what are the things they look for. Because usually the hack is that you don't have to talk about what he has done, but if you can bring the conversation to things which, like, on lines with things he has done, right? So
Yeah.
for a simple example, if a let's say person says that, hey, I was able to grow the like reduce the TAT of my order in a let's say aggregator business, something like a Swiggy or a Zomato,
Mm.
by 5 minutes in this geolocation. That's a huge thing, right? If that's written, I would like to look at that and say that what is the similar thing that I've done in Dunzo. So I see that, hey, maybe I try to reduce not the TAT, but I try to increase the demand of, or maybe the supply, and through that the number of supply hours in that region. So I
Yeah.
can correlate the two, because the game is the same. The game is to, let's say, increase the number of footfall on your platform, so that, and reduce the bounce rate. So all of us are trying to find that one answer different ways. So you need to read up about the person who's interviewing you, and then you need to say that. So I always tend to end my conversations, be it a positive one or a negative one, with, hey, let's try to connect offline as well, right? Let's try to, if I ever come to a Bangalore or a Hyderabad or wherever that person is, or if you are coming to Kolkata, I would always want to go out for a cup of coffee, something which you did with me, right? You want to spark that conversation
Right.
offline. You don't want to always have the professional tagline associated, because whoever is taking your interview uh, will know things which you don't know. There is a possibility that you'll know things which they don't, but they'll
Obviously.
always know things which you don't, right? So it's about striking that chord. So this was two, but I feel most importantly, it's about not letting go of the fact that things will fall in place, right? Beyond anything and everything. Because it's like few days back, my cousin was asking me that things are just not working out, I'm not getting a job, and she's genuinely smart, right? She's from London School of Economics. So
Oh,
the thing is that, so the element is that it's not about the fact that where you come from, not about the fact that are you getting a job right now. It's about you having it in your mind that things will fall in place, because it will, right? The time, again, I understand that a lot of people come from positions where the desperation calls for it. So that is a different conversation we can have, right? But if there is no desperation associated with it, let's break that thing where we need to search a job because of what people will think, right? Or get an MBA because we need to get it,
yeah.
because that's some way, in my opinion, messed up, right? Because I took my CL tuitions, I took my CAT tuitions for at least a year, where I was doing reasonably well, right? But again, that was perhaps my second breakout where I didn't end up taking CAT. And that was maybe because a lot of folks who have come from the likes of Harvards and MITs, who I worked with in Uber, told me that maybe you can get a few more years of experience, or
Yeah.
maybe question why I was doing that MBA, and that answer I didn't have to be very honest, right? Because you can always make up that answer. You can always, because that's one of the most important answers, that why you're doing this. But I didn't have it. And today I can say that if ever, right, if ever the need falls it so that I need to go to a B school, I will be that first, like, front bencher who let's say takes down everything. I will be that guy who tries to top the class and not
Yeah.
stay behind, because the point, like, MBA is that one thing, right? Or the anything similar to MBA, right? Is that one facet where you are doing it because you really want to do it rather than the need of it. And because again, we feel that there are nothing out there for non-MBA students, but there are, right? I can't stress enough on it that the place in India, outside India, and wherever, right? If you bring certain set of skill sets, if you bring certain set of diversity to the organization, no one cares about an MBA, right? And that's the reason why I tried it out, right? I tried it out by not going to a B school. And again, there's a good possibility that I perhaps wouldn't have gotten through. I mean,
Yeah.
there again a 99.9% chance there. But that being said, I let it. I would perhaps let it happen at the point I want it to, rather than people wanting it to happen. Because my mother asks me this question all the time, that art podbe na, which is basically what you study anymore.
Yeah.
But
Classic Indian question.
right, and I say that I don't know, because I genuinely don't, right? Over the years, because of Uber, because of the college I've been, because of the people, this is how we can understand, like, who I am is basically this person who lets himself be, right? Who just doesn't, I don't hassle myself a lot. I don't think that, hey, today things didn't work out. I need to beat myself around it, because tomorrow things might not, but it might, right? So it's about putting in that effort, of course. And I am a lazy bum at times. There are times when I want to do things which I don't, but again, I don't beat myself, because the time is not running away. All of us, right? All of us, we have umpteen amount of like hours, years left, touch wood. And we need to, let's say, if not a concrete plan, we just need to ensure that we allow things to fall in place rather than being that person who's curating everything, because we can't. That plan just doesn't work out. So today I feel the best advice finally I can give to my juniors, because and you asked me about the interviewer perspective, right? I
Yeah.
would not like to get much into that, because I like to believe that the moment you, like, rather than having this shell which you're asking me, that what are the things which interviewer wants today, if it's a good interviewer, they don't want anything but to know who that interviewee is, right? And most importantly, that there was a job which I didn't get through, right? But I understood that after a very good conversation with the interviewer, if I'm not getting through the job, it's not because I am not equipped or good enough. It's because they have found the right fit for the job.
Yeah.
So again, a suggestion which is out there is that if you don't get through things, it's not because you are stupid, bad, weak, not good at something. It's just because you're not the right fit. It's just because what you get to the table is not what they want at this point of time. And that doesn't make you bad. That just makes you something who's right for something else,
Right.
right? So just don't beat yourself to it. Just give yourself that time, right? Because things will fall in place. And that's about it, right? That's about it.
All right. Then I think thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time, Rohan.
Absolutely.
I
Was a
think
pleasure.
you have given a lot of golden advice for all our juniors and all those who are aspiring for a fruitful career.
I feel it's all in us, right? We do end up understanding this at the same time. Maybe someone would hear this and feel that, okay, we can try this out. But
Yeah,
until and unless, so these things can only be advices till the point you follow it, right?
definitely.
For anything and everything, we hear advices every day in life, and it's not really an advice, right? It's about something, let's say, which I didn't do, but today I think I should have,
Yeah,
right? But at the same time, I don't beat myself to it. So it's drawing that fine line of letting things just flow. And again, maybe I'm saying this because I do meditate. I do maybe know that things will fall in place if you're calm, if you're not beating yourself to it. But even if you don't, right, things will. So just let it happen. And finally, right, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but like I was saying, today when people ask me, like, I think the last 3 interviews I took, everyone asked me this question, right? What is your what is your what is your plan for the next, like, after 5 years or this that, which is a
yeah,
which is a staple question which people ask.
yeah,
And and I was for the first time confident enough to say that I don't have one, right? And it worked out for me. I was pretty on point in saying that, hey, XYZ, I don't have a plan. Yes, if you ask me, I do have a goal, but that goal might not be associated to me being an assistant manager in your organization 5 years later, which is usually the standard answer, right?
right.
So it's about having that goal which is personal in nature, because you don't even know that company is going to stay for 5 years or not, right? You don't know if you're going to stay for 5 years. And
Yes.
that's a lot of philosophy unnecessarily, but you just don't, right? You don't. So making plans which are long term just doesn't make sense. You can have expectations out of you, you can have goals which you set,
Yeah,
and you can work towards it, but you just need to be honest in an interview in these elements which are personal in nature.
right.
So yeah, that's more or less about it. I think that sums up a lot of things here.
Yes, it does. Thank you so much. Thank you so
It's a
much
pleasure.
again, Rohan. It was a pleasure